Welcome to the enLIGHTenUP podcast. I'm Lisa Watson and we'll be joined by my co-hosts Nicole Frolick and Brian Koenigberg. The enLIGHTenUP podcast is a weekly show that provides an unconventional and refreshing spin on spirituality, where three friends and weekly guests share informative, fun, and usually off-the-wall conversations. Unlike others, we provide fringe and skeptical viewpoints on all topics, because our experience has taught us that the echo chamber is a boring place from which to learn. So regardless of where you are in your spiritual journey, we can promise you're going to find a place to fit in here. So we invite you to grab a drink and listen in on our casual, entertaining, and hopefully enlightening conversation. And enLIGHTenUP is a self-funded podcast, so if you would like to help us to continue to be able to produce, enhance, and expand the show for our audience, then please send your support using the link in the show notes, or go to our website, enlightenup.us, and check out our merchandise shop, where you can purchase merchandise that will allow you to express some spiritual humor. You may also show your support by leaving us a review on iTunes and following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you all so much for listening and supporting us, and now let's jump right into the episode.
Hello everyone, welcome back to enLIGHTenUP. I am here with Lisa and Brian, and today we are joined by Laurel Airica, who is the creator of WordMagic Global, a mind-bending, paradigm-shifting reintroduction to the English language that brings to light the hidden philosophy in the ordinary words we give voice to every day. By revealing the secret spells of the English language with which we write our own life sentences and the sacred PathWords pointing toward our liberation, Laurel shows in verse and prose how young and old around the globe can collectively, creatively, and quite rapidly take command of the English language and upgrade it to facilitate our essential evolution from humankind to humankindness. Laurel, such a pleasure to have you join us today. How are you?
Well, I'm well, and I'm so looking forward to the opportunity to have this communication with the three of you and with your audience.
Very, very nice to have you here. The words we use, I think, I'm sure our listeners, our audience members are somewhat familiar with the power of word because we're taught a lot through affirmations and to be careful about what words we choose to use because they carry a certain energy. How did you get into this whole domination of the word and the English language and all of that stuff?
Well, I started when I was about 2 or 3 years old. I remember my first pun, and I've written about it a bit. I just was fascinated by words. I remember announcing to my parents when I was 3 or 4, I bet I now know all the words in the English language. Mm-hmm. And I started putting them together in ways that I learned many years later was how the ancients, East and West, would work with language, a much deeper understanding of the ways that they reflect us and communicate with us and affect us. And I feel like this lifetime is a continuation of work that I've done in the past. And so the essence of that is I started early because this is what I came here to do.
And what was your parents' reaction to all of that?
Let's see, how do I put it? In one piece of verse, I said, they both saw two-dimensionally, so missed the better part of me. They were artists. They'd met in art school in Paris, but they were very flat-footed in terms of their thinking. And I was born in the mid-40s, so there was not a whole lot of consciousness afoot. And I believe I was a metaphysical and linguistic prodigy and nature mystic, and I was treated like a half-wit and a bad seed. So it was not a welcoming environment, and I was the only one I know throughout as I was growing up who was looking at what else words say beyond the meaning we've assigned to them seriously. And so I got a lot of dismissal and ridicule. But because I gained so much energy and information by playing with words, they really became my favorite plaything. And so I just persevered in the face of it all. And I remember my sister was about 13 and a half years older, and she had an album on the life and death of Abraham Lincoln. And there was, it was a musical, and there was a refrain that said, "Lonesome train on a lonesome track." So I realized that was the theme song for my life, because I was looking in a direction that no one else did. But because it was what I came here to do, I know that's true. And because words have been so internally expansive for me, I persevered in the face of a lot of dismissal and opposition. And I became very reclusive. As a result, I created a large body of work. And it was simply my personal way of soothing my soul and entertaining myself. I don't remember at what point I realized that that my fantasy world was, that I'd actually discovered something, that it wasn't just all made up. And then gradually finding many more people coming up who find this work interesting. So it's taken some feat of divine magic for more people to find out about it, because I have not been good at all at self-promotion, having been shy, a little technophobic, and just reticent to be seen for a very long time. And yet the work has started to gain a real momentum and a lot of appreciation. And fortunately, there's no end to it. I have what I've shown and what I've shared online is a tip of the iceberg of word magic, of the body of work that I've created, which is hopefully meant to melt isolation and the enormous blockages we have put to our own fullness of expression through just the English language we speak today, and the stories that we live out of, which some of which I've found written in ordinary words, as I've shared.
So you just intuitively, as a child, knew the power that the words had?
Well, I don't know if I knew they had power. I just knew they had a lot more content than people were acknowledging. And so just quickly to tell the first story of the first pun was, everything is so metaphoric. A delivery man came delivering a sound system for my father. And I was 2 or 3 years old, and it was like I think a Magnavox monaural sound system is what it was in my memory, and that my memory may be imperfect of it. But he told me that when he opened the box, that a bat had flown out of the box and had flown out the window or the door and landed in a tree in the backyard. So I ran out to stand in front of a small tree in the backyard, and as I recall it, I anticipated looking for the bat and thinking it was going to be a baseball bat that would be hanging from the trees. And so that was my first awareness that words that had the same sound and completely different meanings, that words could, that different things could be sharing the same sound. And why would that be? And so most people, that's called a pun or a homonym, same name. And it's generally in our culture dismissed as nonsense. And for a very long time, puns were called the lowest form of humor, although James Joyce and William Shakespeare were master punsters, able to use words multidimensionally, having levels of meaning simultaneously. And yet in our culture, puns were consigned to humor, considered foolish humor at that. So, quote, the lowest form of humor. So that's the atmosphere I walked into. And I hear in atmosphere, atmosphere. So I believe there's lots of languaging we need to elevate. So that was the first pun. And a friend described what I do as accidentally, she called it echolocution. And it was like that. And I pursued that bat through echolocution, through the echo chambers of the English language. And as I describe it, I really did dig all the way to China, because I found the Chinese still look at language this way, just like the ancient Greeks and the ancient Egyptians.
When did you start or decide to make this something you would do for a living, or did you study it at university, or how did it become your life?
No, nobody teaches this because nobody took it seriously. And gosh, I think it was on Greg Carlwood's Higher Side Chat, which may be how you found my work. I'm not sure. But in any case, he interviewed someone speaking about the daemon, which is that it gets confused with demon, but it's the creative genius within. And that the daemon in some people is extremely powerful and extremely demanding. And you may even have to make some significant sacrifices in this life to follow the daemon. And my daemon really had possession of me, because this is what I came to do. I think the kind of background that I came from, which was so non-conducive to a happy life, is what drove me to go so deeply into the language. So I am looking toward making this my livelihood because it's most enlivening for me. However, it has not yet produced the prosperity that it has the potential to create, not just for me, but for any and all who wish to participate with it and play with words in these ways. So what I do a lot of is editing other people's work, because I know how to tune up language to become orchestral, so that a communication, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, sings to the hearts and the minds of a person's audience. And so I do a lot of that, and looking forward to doing a whole lot more of word magic.
Well, that's actually very important, because many of us have different ways of communicating our message, but the most important way to communicate your message is in the way that your audience will receive it. So what are some of the varying different types of audiences that you found can take the same message, but you change the wording just to fit their ears or the way that they can receive the message and understand it?
So that there's different ways to look at that question, and I'll give you what pops to mind first. Well, one is that I believe reality comes dressed in its own language. And when one can capture an insight in the moment and write it or record it, then it may continue to have the activating power it did for you when someone else receives it. So that's part A. Part B to my answer is, I once performed about 10 or 15 minutes of word magic, including my word magic anthem, which is called Taking Command of the English Language. And that, I think, can be found on my YouTube channel, also on my WordMagicGlobal.com website, and on my Patreon page. So just Laurel Airica, Taking Command of the English Language, and you'll get a sense of it. So I was performing it and moving and dancing with it to an improvisational drum beat. And the accolade I received afterward that was most meaningful and memorable to me was from a 7-year-old girl who said, "You were great." I so appreciated that, because it meant to me that despite complicated vocabulary that was likely unfamiliar to her, the message communicated, she received it, just like an infant can understand every language on the planet. Whatever is being spoken, there is the ability to grasp the meaning. And so this child grasped it and received it. And so that's part 2 or B of my response. A third is that I was just speaking with a potential client, and she was saying, you're like a bird. You see things from all these different angles. And I wrote a piece called Open Heart Synchrony that's about what the world is like once we tune the language to become as harmonious and growth-inducing as bird songs and cricket choirs. And when I was writing it, it went on for about 3 pages, and I thought self-critically that I was really gilding the lily. However, I could not stop myself. There was my daemon pushing and pushing and pushing until it was finally completed. And then years later, I met Anne and Whitley Strieber. I don't know if you or your audience are familiar with them, but the book Communion, the movie book, was based on Whitley's experience as someone who has met the visitors from wherever they come, interdimensionally or extraterrestrially, that he's met them frequently. Anyway, they gave me a book called The Language of the Birds, and it's by William Henry, the historian and mythologist, and it talks about a green language by which we speak, and there is a response in nature, and we are part of the interchange of information and beauty and love as conversationally. And it turned out that my most far out vision for what could happen when we retune the language to a higher frequency through wordplay in a very simple, fun, and pleasurable way, and through inner listening, it turns out that the language of the birds is English, and that vision is part of ancient mythology, even though it wasn't referring exactly to the English language at the time. However, this is his understanding of it, or understanding, as some like to say. So I have performed where birds have responded. And most recently, I was performing outside, and everyone was looking up above me rather than at me. So I turned my gaze upward, and there was a bird spinning in the vortex of energy. And then it flew off, and it came back, and it was spinning. So I believe that when we speak truly, when we when we become more aware of a language and allow it to speak to us and through us, that it speaks to all the elements, and that it certainly communicates with audiences. So that's the bigger picture response. As an editor, I work with clients to hear the music in their message as they communicate it to me orally and possibly on paper as well. And I spent years as an intuitive counselor, and I worked on the first psychic hotline in Los Angeles, which is a big story in itself, an amusing story. In any case, using my intuitive abilities, my abilities to hear the interior of language, and my rapport with the writer and knowledge of their audience, then we choose words among all those available that are familiar to me and to the author, and we turn it from ideas into verbal music, essentially. And I've sometimes joked that I polish a document to such a high frequency that only the dogs and I can hear it. However, I feel like, and I don't always, it depends on whether a person can afford me to spend that kind of time on it. And there's lots of levels at which we can do it, and not all documents need to be symphonies. So in any case, it creates music at whatever level we do it that will be received beyond the intellect, I believe, and into a deeper place within the person.
Would you be willing to recite some of your performances? I think that would be really, really interesting to hear.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Well, let me take a bit of water. There's a lot I know by heart, and there's a lot that I don't. I'm going to share with you Open Heart Synchrony. So it goes this way. I think of how exquisite it would be when we endeavor together to create an enchanting living language of supernatural poetry that scintillates so sensually that everything around us begins to vibrate sympathetically. Our words will ring so true that our honest expressions initiate lyrical sensations that every creature can appreciate, since we are all interconnected genetically and electromagnetically. So just as bird songs cricket choirs, and other natural voices evoke a wholesome rhythm and nourishing harmonic for the planet. Our gentle elemental language, every time it is spoke, will resonate symphonically with earth and all upon it. Then, when we give our words, if they can't be broken, we shall spin gold every time they are spoken. This may sound absurd, but let no one scoff it. For when truth be told, it shall make us profit. If this vision vibrates your soul, then let go of concern for the rules for transformational English grammar that have made us all such conversational fools, virtually deafened to the defamations still hidden in the glamour of our incessant ancestral verbal clamor. Instead, dismiss whatever impediments have left you feeling anything less than totally literate, and open your heart's mind to allow the transcendental music of a new Singlish language to endow you with the true sacred spells, affirming terms, amazing phrases that can ring all our bells, lift our spirits, sing God's praises, till our whole communication with the Lord in all creation underwrites our transformation and world reconciliation. Let's set tongues wagging around the earth with the possibility of sweetening up English to a true Romance language. For if our words so melt the heart, they start the milk of human kindness flowing, so that every time we speak our mind, we set another flower growing. Then I believe before our very eyes, we human beings, like butterflies, will fully metamorphosize. And that's part 1 of 2.
That was lovely.
It was lovely. It felt so angelic.
Thank you. Well, it turns out, as I said, it is music of the birds, and birds respond to it.
I wanted to ask you, do you think that our language has been purposely dummied down to take out some of the powerful words that we have?
I think everything has been dummied down and misnamed. I think left is right and right is left. I think those words are misnamed, though I have no evidence for it. I think the S-U-N should be your child, and the S-O-N, the sun in the sky. I mean, just visually, it looks like it. So has this been done to us? Most likely to some degree. And what I believe also occurs is that language is like a hall of mirrors and an echo chamber. It's constantly echoing and reflecting us back to ourselves, so that it's aggregating through what we contribute through our own consciousness and vocalizations. And there is also what I've termed an electropoetic force that causes words to migrate across continents, cultures, and centuries to come into the same vibration. And I will give you 2 examples, which are favorite ones of mine. The fact that praying sounds so savage, yet it also sounds divine. Or how about the way the prophet has become our bottom line? Could there be a briefer summary of millennia of history than these pray and prophet metaphors used to justify so-called holy wars? Now add worship or warship, parish or perish, and it's easy to see why the world's so nightmarish. So that's how I would answer that. Yes, quite a bit has no doubt been intentionally done. I do believe that language is not just grammatical, but hologrammatical too, which is why you get these multidimensional echoes and reflections. And the idea, focusing on who did this to us, is to, in my mind, get involved in a fool's game, because there's no winning of it. There's only being captured by the argument. On the other hand, if we see that each of us, as the good book says, are made in the image and likeness and out of that which brought us forth, and brought us forth from the word, from sound and vibration, and that we have the capacity then to speak into existence a new vision of reality and a new vision of humanity as angelic beings, in human form, who've been captured by the web of a lot of really terrible ideas that have brought us to the brink of mass self-annihilation unnecessarily. And I still believe that we can speak a whole new vision of creation into existence. And that's what part 2 of the poem, Open Heart Synchrony, is about, which we can save for another time or whatever.
Oh, we'd love to hear it.
Really? Okay, I'll give you part 2 then. Okay, so here's part 2. I'll repeat the closing paragraph of part 1. Let's set tongues wagging around the earth with the possibility of sweetening up English to a true romance language. For if our words so melt the heart, they start the milk of human kindness flowing, so that every time we speak our mind, we set another flower growing. Then I believe before our very eyes, we human beings like butterflies will fully metamorphosize, and as new creatures in the sun who speak the language that's become our mother planet's mother tongue in this first Aquarian millennium, we will talk our way back through the garden gate with words that help reconsecrate this hallowed ground to which we all are bound by fate. For with this potent new word magic language that our liberated spirits speak and sing in celebration of the union of the highest being with everything that's incarnation, we will succeed in gaining back the deed to Eden that will allow us to pass through a door of heaven. And once our hearts have taken wing, there is no telling what the deep soul velvet of our inner beings will bring upon this plane of waking dreams. We only know that with the lyrics to the song of songs that rings throughout creation, we will regreen the meadows of our hearts with sacred psalms and incantations, and with poems so rich in spirit pollen, mercy grows where words have fallen, and all of us in faith with trust will clearly hear our own soul calling. And then do you know what we can call this place? When everybody walks and talks with the wisdom, beauty, mercy, power, and grace of a Buddha or the Christ? Paradise. For our joyful noise will have made it possible for us to love and live on the freer frequency of a higher octave.
Very nice.
Thank you.
It's like I've never met a rap artist born in the 40s. It's like you were well before your time, and it's just like, do you put music to your
Well, I so love that you're asking that question. And I'm a rap artist in terms of rapture. and rapturousness. And I wrote really my first rap at the age of 20, and it's called the Marijuana Sutra. And the subtitle is Splendor in the Grass.
Oh, I love it.
Thank you. It's pretty cute. And so in terms of putting music together with it, I was invited by a fabulous Christian mystic podcaster rap artist known as Truth Seeker. So Seekah, marvelous, beautiful soul and wonderful artist. And he invited me to contribute a minute to his song on the throat chakra. And I would really like to share it with you because it's short, for one thing, not nearly the length of Open Heart Synchrony. The other thing is that it really is another kind of anthem, because the Christmas before, I'd had a vision of being someone who could call together a colloquium of nimble verbal gymnasts of all ages and cultures to come together in recognition of what we can create energetically, hypnotically, rhythmically by having high intention when we allow the potent, molten language to flow through us and take on forms that absolutely lift consciousness. We feel so powerless in the face of the absolute power-mad insanity going on. And yet we have the power of the word, and we are incarnations of that which spoke everything into existence. So that was the vision. Christmas 2017 is to be able to create that colloquium of nimble verbal gymnasts where we come together with the intention to really do some potent spell casting of the highest levels of beauty and intelligence and wisdom. So the year after, Truth Seeker invited me for a conversation like we're having right now, and then also invited me to contribute a minute to his song on the throat chakra. So I did, and I have the little sound strip for it. But it was my first time trying to rap where I had to conform to a rhythm that to my ears sounded like machine gun fire. And so I did record it, and I can send you the little sound strip that has Truth Seeker's verse and my piece embedded in it. What I'd like to do right now, it's only a page long rather than 3, as the one before was. I'd like to share Speaking Beauty with you.
Sure.
Sure, please.
We are godlings on this planet, here because we all pre-planned it. Ghastly, ghostly shadows, damn it. Now's our chance to Superman it. Lift your voices, re-enchant it. Freedom's codes are all semantic. Though we're small and sometimes frantic, souls are whole and all gigantic. These may be our darkest hours, yet each of us has superpowers. The infinite is infinite, which means we can switch on the light. All life's a dream, and we're the dreamers. Though hate's streaming through the schemers, we're all here as world redeemers. Beaming peace, we're love's supremers. So mages, sorceresses, sages, artists of all sorts and ages, share your gifts now, be courageous. Daring actions are contagious. Diamond minds and hearts of gold are gifts that prophecies foretold for those uniting souls on earth by honoring each being's full worth. When we let go of againstness, we step into our immenseness, for the genesis of genius is the light we strike between us as we use the gifts with which we are blessed to inspire higher consciousness.
Wow, that's awesome.
Thank you.
That's right in line with all the things we talk about.
Thank you. Well, I'd be happy to send it to you if you want to post it.
Yeah, that would be great. We'll play it right here.
Lovely. Please.
Ah, you're so gangster.
That was awesome. I love it.
Could you explain to our audience, especially for someone who might be new to this,
Like Brian.
yes, like Brian, exactly what the power of the word is and why we should be encouraged to use it, whether it's in an affirmation, a declaration to the universe, perhaps even for your own protection. Can you first explain what exactly the power of the word is, and then why people should be using it?
Well, the word is equated with God. So in a sense, you're asking me what exactly is the power of God. and how can we make greatest use of that power. So there are there's all sorts of interdimensional awarenesses about this that I cannot explain to any degree, because my knowledge of it on that level is not up to that response that you are seeking. So what I can share is that everything is vibration. Everything is sound in motion. And as we speak, we are having an impact on not just on listeners, but on everything around us, because everything is made of energy. So we are the one creature on the planet who has that ability to speak into existence what it is we are seeking to create, or what it is we are seeking to avoid. So when we use our power of the word to communicate, to set off vibrations, it's like we have the word intention, and that always puts me in mind of a big web. And we are putting a tension into that web. We are sending off frequencies that cannot but return to us, sometimes immediately, sometimes over time. So to be more conscious of words as living energies, as little vital entities and packets of information with awareness, with more messages than we've been aware of. We've assigned something to them, and they are so much more than that, and they can impact us, we can impact them. So kindness, it's like I believe that everything we're seeking in life has to do with sensations, and we're seeking the highest and the sweetest. And we think it takes more of this and more of that to allow us to access those frequencies within ourselves, but actually it doesn't. That may be the trigger, but it's been there all along, and we can trigger it for ourselves as we speak, as we communicate, as we hold intentions. And the higher the frequency, the sweeter, the finer, the more pleasurable. And so kindness, of course, is far more pleasurable than cruelty, both to the giver and the receiver. And once I was looking at what is the nature of free will, and I realized that there are spectrums of things, and we can experience a frequency, a spectrum on various levels. So for instance, violence, violins, and violet are all, in my mind, on the same arc. So you can touch to the essence of life through violence, in which you've got blood on your hands, and what is more the essence of human life than blood? Or you can do it through the violet flame, through beauty and purification and high frequency. And as speakers of the word, we're constantly creating the music of our lives. And no matter how loud it may be, or whatever we might judge it to be, the more it can be about engendering within ourselves and other people feelings of pleasure and joy, which kindness does, the more enjoyable our life becomes. So I don't know how to answer your question more than that.
Oh, you did great.
Thank you. Okay.
So we just all came back from Jessica Alstrom's Quantum Revolution tour. And part of the process in the tour was people were discovering their I am, and they were placing a word after that really kind of spoke to their own power of who they are, how they want to show up. And so I guess from what I gather from what you just were saying is that for us and our audience to be so conscious of the words that we choose, because when we are saying things like I am and then following it with other words, we're literally putting out information packets to the universe that will match that frequency. And it's like attracts like. And so you have that option of bringing that in through your word as much as through your emotions, your thoughts, your deeds.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, Nicole, because I was thinking about that as well, and I've actually been thinking something for the last couple of weeks, and I'm curious what you all think, specifically you, Laurel.
Yes.
You were talking about the spoken word.
Yes.
Does it really have to be audible? Because when I say something in my mind that I hear, because we're talking about energy, and it is the vibration of my voice that important for, manifesting something, or, reciting my I am statement, or can I speak in my mind?
Oh, yes, I believe you can. And yes, I mean, they're different frequencies, and someone else can give you the a much more technically astute answer than I'm able to. However, I can tell you that intention is so high, and I mean, you might be it's so potent that you might be hearing, "I am love. I am what." I am beauty, I am wisdom, whatever it is you're hearing. It might even be a whisper inside yourself, but if it's stirring your heart and your guts, if it's just really how you're feeling it energetically, it has more power. It has the most power then.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Brian, for a lot of people to hear, because, I think it's very important to use your voice. It doesn't mean you have to use your voice, but it's another tool to amplify what's kind of going on. So, like, for instance, when we were at the QRT, we spoke into a machine, like a program that took the tones of your voice, you saying certain vowels, and created a sound therapy scalar energy program for you to listen to. So there is some sort of power behind your own frequency of your voice, the vibration of your actual voice coming out, because no one says it the way that you do. It's all like a unique imprint or signature that we all have. And then on top of that, one of the things that I get my clients to do is to record them saying things that are like affirmation wise, and then listen to it, because I feel like you hearing the sound of your own voice, there's something empowering about hearing you have the command as opposed to someone else saying it. There's like it really imprints the belief system that you have.
Beautiful. I completely agree.
I also think, with, say myself, I channel light language, and what I've learned about light language and how it works with you on a cellular level, I would imagine that the languages are the same way, that not just the words, but the tones are, as you said, Laurel, emitting frequencies that are affecting us in certain ways. And
right, it's not what you said, it's how you said it.
Yeah. And it seems like over the past 20 years or so, the English language has seemed to decline more and more, especially with music lyrics and the way that our teenagers are speaking.
More bass, not boom chicka boom bass, but, BASE.
Well, no, I know exactly what you mean. And I love the word debasement. I write it D apostrophe because that's where it takes it. And I remember the phrase debasement of the culture, and it's KULTUR. And I Googled that, and it turned out that was, I think, focused primarily on what happened in Nazi Germany that's happening here. I mean, look at even country names. It's so ridiculous. Germany, So there's so many country names that are reflections of their contents. But I don't want to take away from this conversation, because I think what you said, and I don't know if it was Nicole or Lisa who said it, about hearing your own wisdom in your own voice reminds you of who you are.
Mm-hmm. And that is such an important part of this whole journey. So many of us are remembering who we are.
Yes.
And not who we were told to be, or remembering the very essence of our origination of creation.
Yes. Certainly that is the desire, and many more are, people are being born so much more awake. And I think with an upgraded brain as well. So I had a dream once where I was listening to an advanced linguist speak, And what he said was that when we tune up the language, the people who come in won't have to forget who they are, where they came from, and why they're here.
I think of my children when my kids are in their 20s, but when they were teenagers and they started using words like, "Oh, that's so sick." You know, my son says that.
He still says it.
Yeah, he still says. He's 27 and he still says that. But just the corruption of our language and the decline of it, and the power that has, and that if people truly understood that we really need to get back to.
Yeah. Or the laughter, when someone's laughter and someone will say dying, like, and then they've got like the laughing emoji coming after it. It's like, you think about all of these words that we're using. You're so right, Lisa. Like there's definitely something to be aware of there.
It's like when you want to say that someone's really powerful or, in their power, like, oh, wow, like, he's such a badass. It's like, why are we saying things like that? Why are we using these words and not understanding how powerful they really are?
Well, and we're really sentencing ourselves. Now, this is a true self-condemnation. I was thinking maybe yesterday about how it's become common for people to refer to male genitalia as junk. And that is such an ugly, degrading image for the sword of life. Everything is about debasement of consciousness and the loss of awareness. And so I do believe we do need to even rename things, and starting with the Big Bang.
Well, I like the sword of life, actually.
Yeah,
I think that's great. Cool. I think that's awesome. I'm going to definitely use it, because a lot of times women are referred to as the chalice of life, right?
Okay, yes, then definitely that's gorgeous. So if fuck wasn't used to condemn people, you would think the insanity of taking the most pleasurable physical exchange with someone and throwing it as an insult and a condemnation at someone else. Oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've got ourselves literally working at cross purposes with ourselves. Yeah.
Backwards.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Wow, Brian.
You're so quick.
Yep, that's it. I talk about turning words inside out and backwards. And when you do that, I mean, boy, it's so enlightening and so illuminating. Anyway, Chalice and the Blade, gorgeous.
Yeah.
So you do work with people. I know you do some editing, but I would imagine that you also do work with them on websites and maybe blog posts or things like that. I can imagine that it would be extremely impactful to have someone like you review your work.
Thank you so much. Yes, I appreciate that. And I do my best to cast word magic there as well. And love supporting people, intuiting their essence, and then helping them language it in such a way that other people feel that their energy conveyed through their name. So that's certainly the goal. And yes, I do that. And I help them with speaking and with reciting and with creating at any level and at any point in their process of seeking to become adepts with the word in the written form and the spoken.
Can we play a little game?
Yes. Okay.
And I don't know if this is something you're up for or if it even is something, but I'm going to throw it out there because it keeps coming in. You know, one of the hardest parts of this whole journey of awakening is coming out of the closet to your loved ones, right? Letting people know what you're all about, where your heart's kind of leading you, and letting people kind of opening the door to them to let them see inside to what's really sparking life inside of you. Since you can take the words of, and I'm sure you've heard this many times, of say someone who wants to share with a family member or a partner or a really good friend their awakening process or what's kind of going on within them in a way that they could hear it and understand it?
Well, it requires being in rapport with that person, giving them permission to be where they're at in their own consciousness, and then sharing in the simplest terms. I had an experience like that when my father was quite elderly and had Alzheimer's, and he really had no spiritual, metaphysical, awakened inkling when he was fully conscious. On this occasion, when I was sitting with him, I asked if he would like me to speak a prayer, and he would, and I said, I think, maybe he mentioned that he didn't believe in God, and I said, well, I think of God as love, and he liked that, and I spoke a spontaneous prayer, and this man, who couldn't track more than an instant at a time, tracked the whole time through, and at the end said, that was beautiful. So I do believe that we can, with high intention, communicate at a level that can be received by the other person as we stay in tune with ourselves, in rhythm and rapport with them, and open to allowing spontaneous words to flow, trusting that these will be the words that can plant seeds in the other person, even if they don't immediately sprout flowers.
Mm-hmm. I think it's, and I think this is so important for many to understand, because it's a fine dance between honoring your truth, but also knowing that if your truth falls on deaf ears, then you're never heard. So how do you find the balance between speaking your truth, but also speaking it in a way that someone can hear you and receive you so that it's communicated and heard?
So the best way to do that, and really the only way to do that, is by integrating what you are awakening to, that you are living it, you're demonstrating it, and you're transformed by it and through it. And at some point, the other person may notice. If that even never occurs consciously, it's still occurring energetically, and it's like the wheels are turning within, the wheels of evolution. So that would be my answer, is to live it and be it. And at a certain point, the other person may be more receptive, not just to see it, but to hear it as well.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree with you more on that. I've definitely experienced that, and being the model, living it out is much more powerful than speaking it first.
Yes, absolutely.
And sometimes when you say something to someone with that full intention that you were speaking of, Nicole, they may not get it right away, but it's kind of like that water drop, that it may resonate with them much later down the line.
Or it may be like your light language, and it speaks to them on a deeper level.
Yeah, that they don't yet understand, but their heart knows. Mm-hmm.
Right, but it's there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, thank you, Laurel, so much for being on the show. This is such a beautiful experience. Your words it was truly artistic, and I felt like I was being taken on a story the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you so much for that reflection. There's so much more of that which I haven't yet made available. I have a page for people to become patrons of my art, so that I can share the treasury of word magic as I continue to cultivate more. So,
do you have a YouTube channel? I know you have your website, but do you do?
I have a YouTube channel, and I also have a Patreon page, which is patreon.com/WordMagic Global, and people can become patrons, and they will receive not just my grateful heart, but also some grateful gifts. I am also going to be starting an online conversation called the LMN Tree School. And I will send you a description if you care to share that with your audience. That's going to begin on April 16th. I don't yet have the time or the Zoom link. That I will be determining shortly.
Yeah, we can add all those links into the show notes.
Thank you so very much. So, well, you're lovely to speak with. And I love that you continually inform yourselves and expand yourselves. And that's beautiful.
Oh, it was such a pleasure to have you on. I thank you so much for sharing some of your art with us and our audience.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. And I look forward to our next conversation whenever and however it occurs.
Absolutely. And so to our audience, all that information is going to be in the show notes. So please check that out if you're interested in listening to more of Laurel's work or supporting her as well. And I think it's really important for us to be consciously aware of the words that we're choosing as much as we're aware of the thoughts that we're thinking and the actions that we're doing, and not reacting, but acting. And so it's all plays a part. So it's all very important. Thank you so much, Laurel, for being on the show. And thank you to our audience for joining us again. Once again this week, we will be back with you next time.
Thank you all for joining our show. We appreciate you tuning in and supporting us. If any of you have any questions you would like answered on the show, or any guests that you would like to hear on our show, please email that information to us at info@enlightenup.us, or send us a voice message using the Anchor app. There's a super cool feature on there that allows you to send us a message or ask us a question with a touch of a button right from the app. And please continue to support us by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you haven't checked out Nicole's channel on YouTube yet, head on over there for some more insight from her, or you can visit her website, inflexibleme.com, where you can book a personal coaching session or a tarot reading, watch some of her most informative videos, or you can sign up for her newsletter. And if you're interested in some light language healing, head to my YouTube channel, Lisa Loves Love, or send me an email to lisa@lisaloveslove.com to inquire about your own personal reading. Thank you again for joining us and supporting us, and we'll be back with you all next week.